Big Things. I'm Mitzi. This is Mike.
This is our show where we talk about the things we're watching in marketing, social media, pop culture, and sports. And we go through the signals that we're seeing that could inform the future of digital marketing.
Today on the show, we're welcoming our first ever guest on Big Things. It's Alyssa Yuhas. Alyssa is our very own creative director and Arcade's resident futurist. And today we're talking to her all about our brand new trend report, what digital audiences really want in 2025.
Alyssa is a visual designer, and throughout her career, she's collaborated with exciting, innovative brands engaging in meaningful work, from online creators to Nike to the United Nations, helping move them from an idea to a compelling result. She has a master's in strategic foresight and innovation, which is an exciting aspect of what we're going to get into today with her and what she brings to Arcade in general.
I'm really excited about this episode because it's going to be summarizing a lot of what the work we've been doing all year, but I really feel like it's going to be valuable for anyone who works in marketing, especially as they're setting up strategies for 2025. So I hope you find it valuable too. Before we get into the episode, we want to remind you to just subscribe and leave a review if you enjoy the show. You can catch the show every Friday on YouTube and all streaming platforms. Also, our trend report, which we talk about, can be viewed on Substack, and it's available for free at the link in our bio.
Without further ado, let's welcome Alyssa.
Welcome to Big Things, Alyssa. You're our very first guest. We're so happy to have you.
We've got a lot to unpack today. But before we start discussing the actual trends, I really want to make sure that we set the stage properly and help people understand what this process looks like to get where we got. So for our listeners and our audience, can you just unpack a little bit about how we get to this trend report and specifically what a futurist does?
Yes, definitely. So I feel like the futurist question is kind of a big question, but overall, a futurist is looking for futures, for future opportunities, for future innovations, challenges ahead. And so a lot of times, especially in the space where people are actually engaging with like actual futurists, it's a lot of times in government, in like public sector, in policy, and then technology for sure. Those are who have engaged with them in the past. And it's often to really solve complex problems, to understand what's coming, and the different ways that we can react to them. So post-pandemic future thinking has become really, really important because we've definitely seen that, leading up to the pandemic, there was a lot of larger agencies, organizations thinking about these wild things that are potentially happening, like a pandemic. But a lot of smaller agencies or smaller organizations, people weren't necessarily thinking about that. So post-pandemic, futures thinking has become a lot more mainstream. A lot more people are engaging it. And so that's kind of what a futurist does. I don't know. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, 100%. And I think ever since you introduced it to us, it's really opened our eyes to just a different way of thinking. It can sound, I think, intimidating to think that someone could officially be called a futurist and like what the process can look like. But I think for us, as we've started to understand what the practice is like, it's also just, it influences the way we think about anything. So I'm really excited to unpack this a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think before we started working together, I didn't know what a futurist was. I'm sure lots of people maybe aren't familiar with it either. But I think what you walked us through is kind of like this like methodology of approaching content. And most of us, if you work in social or digital marketing, you're consuming a lot of content. Even like if you don't realize it, every time you open your phone, every time you look at social media, anything like is content. And a lot of those things end up being signals. So can you walk us through what are signals and what's the methodology behind how you kind of like look to the future?
Yeah, definitely. And even just to go back to the futurist question, it's exactly what you said. We're using all of these different methodologies. Futurists will use like different things, but it's about being not reactionary. So it's about, having that space to understand what's coming next so you aren't surprised by it, so you know what to do.
Which is huge because I think in our industry we're good on the fly. We're used to reacting to trends, but this isn't that. This is like looking ahead, basically taking in everything we've seen and we've consumed and having more of a strategic and critical eye and identifying what these could point to.
Yeah, for me, I feel like it's had a calming effect. It's like a
Totally.
stabilizing process, so that instead of feeling like I'm just like kind of jumping at whatever jumps out at me or defending against whatever comes my way, it's like a more zoomed out macro view of the landscape within which I exist, so that I can better anticipate the things that I need to pay attention to and the things that I can just kind of let pass me by.
Amazing. Yeah. And that's like what it is. So for what we've been doing with our team is called scanning, or like in futures thinking, they call it horizon scanning. But for us, for our purposes, we can just call it scanning. Mm-hmm. And that's where we're looking at signals. So for us, like you said, you can see signals and everywhere. We're probably all consuming them at all the time. And so what our practice at Arcade is to really like stop and start to interrogate the things that we're looking at and understand, what's happening, what will happen next. So signals in general are usually, well, what I tell the team is we want signals that are current, are surprising, and specific. So current being things that are happening now. We don't necessarily want to know what's happening 5 years ago, or even sometimes a year ago, 6 months ago feels dated. So we want to sort of see what's happening now. Surprising. So, these signals aren't necessarily like huge, like everyone's doing it, and that's the point. So surprising could feel surprising to you, surprising to me, maybe not surprising to everyone on the team, and that's okay. So there are things that make you maybe pause, make you think, maybe make you go, okay, what's happening here? And then, so current, surprising, and specific. Yeah. And then specific is we want to really narrow in. So a lot of like it being more of a specific headline. And that one's like a little bit trickier, but even for us, we frame it around digital marketing. So we're really always trying to look at our signals through that lens of like digital marketing, what's happening here and how could it impact that.
Right. So a signal can be like anything. Like it could be a news story. It could be an Instagram post. It could be a campaign. It could be a law. So I think all of us, we were kind of doing signal scanning without knowing what it was before we worked with you. And it was funny because you really schooled us and educated us, and it helped us turn that attention to something productive and focused, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's exactly like you said. So a signal it's like a small innovation. It's something changing. You want to make sure that a signal, or it's a signal because there's some type of movement. So it could be decelerating, accelerating, but there's some change happening there. So that's important. So yeah, like you said, a law, an event, like a market strategy, a new policy, a headline, a tweet, if those are even happening anymore. Yeah.
Depends who you ask.
Yeah. So all of that can be a signal, and that you can start to kind of, compile these signals together to start to see patterns. And I think that's so much of us are doing that. So many of us are online. We're looking at things, we're reading things all the time, but it's about putting these signals together and starting to see the patterns. And that's what we've been doing at Arcade.
I like it. I think the movement thing was eye-opening for me, but even more than that, the idea that something can be a signal just as much if it's decelerating, if it shows deceleration as much as if it shows acceleration. And one example just off the top of my head of that is NFTs. Like for a while we saw that really heating up, kind of side by side with crypto. And then as I think Bitcoin especially, but crypto in general has continued to accelerate, but maybe NFTs have started to decelerate. And that's not to say that they won't become popular again, but it's important, I think, for us to recognize that those types of movements are just as important and notable.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like that whole interrogation of the signal. So we always ask like, what's changing? Why does it matter? And what could happen next? So even for NFTs, sure, it's decelerating, but like why? And like why is the change happening? And if they decelerate, what could happen? And then we're even seeing like little blips of like NFT, but like why, right? So we can start to kind of ask why and what's happening as well.
Because they're just like uncool and like hard to understand. Thank God they're not accelerating, because I could not wrap my head around NFTs.
Well, I think I'm not an expert in NFTs, but from the little I know about it, I think that it still could accelerate again. But I feel like it was harder to understand for like people, the general person, to wrap their head around how do I value something like a codified piece of art, whereas it's easier to comprehend how you might value another type of digital currency, because that's more supply and demand. But yeah, I don't know. I think that it's TBD, but I think that there's still the opportunity as, the metaverse slowly develops and materializes, that this could be a thing in the future.
Okay.
And I'm not even an NFT fan, so I'm not trying to make it happen.
Well, we're talking about signals today because we've used those signals. We've been tracking those signals all year round, and Morgan, shout out to Morgan, who was a big partner in getting this trend report live. She wrote most of it and does an amazing job. But you and with Morgan, took all these signals and started grouping them, right?
Yeah. So we meet regularly as a team. We're looking at signals, and that's also another thing that's important about scanning, is not doing it alone. So having other people, other experiences, other biases, all coming together, looking at signals together, because we can have our own ideas of what's happening, but it might be based on our own lived experience that's different from other people and different from the other signals that other people are looking at. So that's the beauty of us coming together at Arcade to look at them weekly or monthly, and talk about the signals that we're looking at. So we do that already regularly as a team. We're cataloging all of those. Then we started to, in advance of this report, started to bring them together along with other signals, things that we're seeing, and start to, group them together, synthesize them, start to understand, see the patterns that are emerging, and really just even interrogate the patterns. Like, why is this happening? Why are all of these things sort of grouping together? What's happening next? And yes, and Morgan, being my partner in all of this, and has been such a joy to work with her. And we also work on the newsletter. So even just that work together has really come into the play with this.
Yeah, and if people don't know, we have a newsletter. We send it out every 2 weeks. It's called Scan Club, and we've got about 3,000 subscribers so far. We've been doing it for maybe a year and a half, and it's awesome. And for me, I think beyond the monthly touch points we have together as a team to talk just really in an unpolished way about some of the signals that we're seeing, it's really cool. I think it's like the next step for me to see the newsletter come out, because I read it too as a reader, and to see how these just random bits of information that we're processing together and, to your point, interrogating together, start to form bigger pictures and bigger movements, and it kind of expose their connections. So I think if you haven't subscribed already, make sure that you are, and you can ride along on this journey with us, and even maybe play a small part in the next trend report.
Totally. I love promoting Scan Club because I'm so proud of it, and I didn't do it. It's doesn't feel weird to promote effort. Something that I'm not part of it.
Scanclub.substack.com.
Yeah, there it is. One thing I wanted to clarify. So obviously a lot of us can get in the trap of just scrolling and doom scrolling. Explain how, absorbing information might be different than scanning. It's a bit more active, right?
100%. Yeah. And I've actually even been thinking about that lately, because I'm trying to be more healthy with my online habits and not doom scrolling. So yes, it's a lot more active. You're not just consuming it just to consume. You're asking questions of it. So it's the whole thing of what's changing? Why does this matter? And what could happen next? So yeah, I think it's that active nature of it. You're not just kind of letting it come, I don't know, into your brain, into who you are or whatever. You're looking at it more and active, and trying to see the patterns, see the movement as well.
I do find, to that point, there's definitely times when I'm more proactively looking for things, but then also after you start to train your brain to think about those things, and then you actually call out or notice specific signals. I think other times when I'm not necessarily as actively scanning, my brain still knows to recognize things that connect to the signals that I've noticed before. So that's kind of cool too, just to see how your brain starts to learn.
I feel like I'm always looking at something and I'm like, oh, that's a signal. Now that I kind of know what to look for, and also keeping in mind some of the trends that we've outlined. I think if someone goes to this report, kind of thinks about these trends, they'll start seeing signals that support those trends in just everyday life. Okay, so we're going to break down every trend from our new trend report. But before we do, I want to be clear that you've helped us identify what trends are, and they're different than what the internet says trends are. Like, I think we've all heard trends, and we've heard it related to TikTok trends. Is this a report about TikTok trends?
No. So yeah, TikTok trends, you're right. Here today, gone tomorrow. This is where a lot of that like stress and like, doom scrolling or just like the anxiety that can come online. And maybe even as marketers, like you're seeing all these trends coming, they're coming so fast, you feel like you can't even jump on anything because they're, here today, gone tomorrow. So what we're looking at though, is we're looking at trends that have longevity. So they're probably between 3, maybe even 8 years. But let's for like our purposes, we'll say they're around like 3 years, right? Other TikTok trends can be a lot faster. It can be weeks, it can be months, it can be days. And then we also want to think about fads. So we're not looking at fads. Fads, again, would fall probably a bit more around the TikTok trends. So those often are like 1 to 2 years. And yeah, I think that we're just looking at things that are a bit more with long-term impacts. Our short-term signals are laddering up to these larger trends that have long-term impacts and that are really thinking about things with a bit more longevity.
Thank God.
Right?
This is not a TikTok trend report.
Yeah. I think that's not to discount like the things that are happening on TikTok though, because I think definitely even some of the micro trends we see on that platform or on Instagram can even be signals in and of themselves. And we can ask questions about those things and learn what we need to learn from them, or even sometimes choose to react to them.
Yes.
But I think it's just having more of a measured kind of like, I think we've said macro a few times already, but more of a macro perspective about what's happening in behavior and not just at the channel level.
Exactly. And I don't want to diminish or minimize TikTok in any means, because I think you've actually validated us so much with like giving us an opportunity to use social to help us think critically and think more bigger about like, okay, this kind of TikTok video is trending. Why? What does it mean? Why do people all want someone to pay their mortgage? Like, what could that point to? And like, does that have anything to do with like us as a society and what we need right now? And sometimes the answer is yes, which I'm excited to. That's a little teaser for you because that is connected to one of our trends.
Nice. And before we get into the trends themselves, I want to say too that as an agency and as marketers, that this practice and process has been something that we actually bring into our client work. It's not just something that we kind of like sensationalize and get excited about, but then move on and back to our typical content planning practices. But we've been able to start to work this into the way that we think about digital strategy at the brand level, thinking about the types of content that we're sharing in light of some of the trends that we begin to map together from the signals that we recognize. It also can be useful for coming up with campaign ideas, or maybe even not the idea itself, but the way that it's executed or delivered, or where you do it, or what the tone is. And I think having this foresight practice allows us, I guess you could look at it one of two ways. In some ways, it feels like it reduces risk because we have a better sense of what the future holds or could hold, or different scenarios for it. But it also, in other ways, increases the likelihood of resonance with audiences because we understand what they care about right now and the way they're moving and the decisions that they're making and the values that they hold.
Totally. It's a way to future-proof your strategy.
Yeah, that was so good.
Cool.
Good thing we're recording.
Agreed.
Okay, should we get into the actual trends?
Let's do it. I can cue up the first trend. I feel like this is a big reveal, but the first one is people want to be seen. So Alyssa, that can feel or sound like a whole bunch of different things because it's at a pretty high level, but can you help us unpack a little bit about how we arrived at that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think also I want to just quickly take a step back in that we're looking at this also with the lens of like, what's happening politically, economically, et cetera, in the world right now. So a lot of the trends are living in that. We are looking at it around the frame of digital marketing, but it's so important to be looking at signals, not just in marketing, not just in the creative world, not just in media, et cetera. We need to be looking more globally, and that's what we did. And so a lot of these trends are coming out of that as well. So yes, people want to be seen. So that's really around how we're really thinking about highlighting the growing demand for personalized, culturally aware, like hyper niche marketing. That's really recognizing and valuing individual identities and experiences. So in that, we're seeing that people are really wanting products and content that feel bespoke, representation across demographics, personalization around experiences, age diversity in campaigns, inclusivity around gender and body types, and acknowledgement of cultural backgrounds.
One of the signals that felt like so clearly connected to this trend is how YouTube, they launched, what I mean was Pinterest. They launched their new body type ranges to deliver better, more inclusive results. So if I'm looking for a, hairstyle that suits my hair type or texture, you can like prescribe what your type is, and then they'll give you search results based on that. So if your hair is naturally curly, like this haircut works better for that type of hair. Or if it's like coarse or whatever, like I feel like that whole innovation, and it's a technology innovation, is a signal that ladders up to this kind of trend.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's the advancements in technology that are definitely helping for this to be a bit more widespread, that people can use more personalization online, on apps, et cetera, to really like speak to their audience.
One that I can think of, though, it's less recent. I feel like, I don't know how long this brand has been around, but it was a big decision that they made that didn't leverage technology, but it was Good American Jeans, and they decided to shoot a model in every different size of their jeans for their e-com store.
They're the first brand to ever do that.
Yeah, where most brands would just shoot the pant on like what they perceive to be the ideal model and the ideal size, and then they just show product photos of the rest of the sizes. And that made waves, And I think that's a cool example of like a brand just getting it and choosing to put in the effort to personalize the experience for every customer.
I think this trend also points to not just like diversity and inclusion, but also to like niche communities. And I think McDonald's is like a great brand that does this really well. They really lean into like that niche community and just like double down on it. Even if it doesn't apply to like their mass consumer base, they're like, we pick this. I don't even know, like, I can't think of an example right now. And we're just going to like really give that community what they need and then we want them to feel seen in this campaign.
Yeah, I think that was the McDonald's one where it was a bit more
it's for like
anime.
The anime world,
yeah. Which is so cool. Like I love seeing brands, or like I love this trend in that it's speaking to those smaller communities within your community. And giving them the importance and believing that they deserve to be spoken to just as much as like the widespread mainstream, a bit more generic. It's kind of like seeing every single person. So I think people are really wanting that, I think in general, and then also seeing that in the content they're looking at, in the communities they're a part of, and the marketing that's being targeted to them.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. We do have a variety of different signals or references that connect to each of these trends, and we'll share them in the show notes afterwards, just so everybody knows.
Totally. Should we move on to the next one?
Let's do it.
Okay, trend 2. People want realness. How can we keep it real this year, Alyssa?
Oh, good question. Yeah, so this trend is a fun one. So it really is reflecting a shift towards real and human-centered content and storytelling. So it's it's a bit of a rejection. So AI, right? AI is like getting shoved down everyone's throats. Like it's everywhere. It's happening, whether you like it or not. People are really jumping on board of that. A lot of content, a lot of, video, photos are really going into that. ChatGPT, people are using that to write their content. So this is sort of a rejection of that. So people are wanting genuine connection, relatability, and just like real over polish.
Love it. So you're saying AI is out. It's not a trend. Just kidding. No, that's not what you're saying at all. It just means that people are starting to crave like that human touch.
Yeah, or just like understanding or seeing what is out there that is AI and just wanting the opposite. So if I'm looking at content, if I'm looking at a video, I want to know that a real human made this or a team of humans made this. I'm gonna be more interested in that versus it just being computer generated.
I was going to say, I think it absolutely is a reaction to AI, but I feel like there's more to it than that too. Like even from when you had kind of brought some of these trends to us in the first place with the rough draft, I remember you mentioning that people will want the mess. And that kind of resonated with me even more than just saying we want something that's made by a person. I think there's, as creators and brands get smarter and better at doing more and like creating a better production with less, I feel like there's still a desire from audiences and like people that are actually consuming content to just see the truth, and take away some of these layers of production quality and just give us the real honest story. And I find that I'm reacting to that. And that's even why I still find myself spending time on a platform like Twitter. It's like a crazy, like polarized place, but it's so raw and real, and I think there's something to that, even though it's a bit scary and tumultuous to be on that platform sometimes at the same time. So I just wanted to point that out. You mentioned people over polish, and I think that's absolutely true, AI aside, that your story could mean a lot to people without having to make it perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I feel like this year we're going to see a lot of brands lean into that, like telling personal stories, like real, like relatable stories, not like marketing campaigns where it's like a perfect like tied up in a bow. It's like stuff that makes you feel something and it's gonna like connect you back to humanity. I've already seen like some brands kind of dabble in that, and that has always resonated. This isn't a new thing, but I think what you're saying is like we're starting to crave that even more now because of how technology has changed. And so messiness, the real, the raw, the human stuff, like that's what people want to see.
Yeah, exactly. And this one is where kind of sports really play in a big role as well, like that unscripted moments to cheer for, moments to like that don't feel created or produced.
Or the underdog winning the game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sports is the new reality TV. Like it is so real. It's like you can't make that stuff up. Like when you understand the stories, I've like really just been so excited about getting into sports because there's so many storylines, there's players, there's coaches, there's business. Like it has all of those layers and it happens every week. And I think it's really cool.
To that point, there's even realness to the players. Like what used to be just presented as a person, like a talented person on a football field or on a basketball court. Now there's, I think, as the industry and different brands and even the players themselves react to what people seem to engage with or respond to, now we're starting to actually see their backstory and their life at home or their significant other or that side project that they have or the illness that they've been battling with or things like that, loss that they've experienced. And that adds so much more color to the story.
Yeah. And all the unscripted stuff, like I'm seeing, and I think we're even working on some campaigns where we're starting to mic up players. And even that, just like getting their commentary, the real stuff, like the on the fly stuff, this happened and what did they say? Like that in itself is a moment that people are really excited about.
Fun.
More of that.
Is that all we have to say about trend 2? Anything else? We can keep it rolling. Trend 3 is that people want shared moments. So let's get a high level summary of what that means.
Yeah, so this one's interesting because it's definitely a continuation from last year, what we're seeing with like like the big Eras tour and like Beyonce's tour and like all of these things. But this one's really around the collective experience that fosters connection and participation. And especially when you can take, when this experience can be amplified through social media and you can just feel a part of that larger cultural moment. So even if you didn't go to the Eras tour, there's like still so much that you could have been a part of. And I don't want to talk about Taylor Swift anymore, but that's kind of what it is. It's these shared moments. We're coming together and we can really get connected. So There's a lot of fandoms, niche groups, and creating more moments of monoculture. So monoculture is really it's been hard to be a part of because of social media, because of all the different areas, but creating these larger moments that you can be a part of.
Yeah, I'm not a Swiftie, but even I wanted to go to the Eras tour because everyone was there. I'm hoping we get that same energy this year if Beyonce announces her tour. So I think I'm going to take Mike. I've gone.
Me?
Yeah, I think it's time you and I
Just like
experience
production quality would be so. I mean, I have been to her concerts, and yeah, it's incredible.
that. Yeah. So what you're saying is like people are looking for things that they can share on social media.
Yeah, and share together. So even let's say again, I don't want to keep using Taylor, but you like the friendship bracelets, like being able to share that, and people could even be doing that when they weren't on at the tour. But then sharing things online, being a part of it online. We're also seeing like some of our signals were around like book clubs, like run groups, different things like that, where you can be a part of the smaller group, but then share it online and be a part of something bigger online. So it's even small groups laddering up to like the larger group, or obviously like these large, huge moments, even coming down into smaller moments.
Yeah, and I feel like an easy example would be the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight, and that was a huge moment that people all experienced together. But I feel like it was a moment in the sense of the fight, but then also there was this like shared experience that people had with how bad the stream was too, and like that was a huge part of the discourse. Obviously, that wasn't Netflix's desired outcome, but even in that sense, when things go right or when things go wrong, there's an opportunity for people to experience it together in real time.
Yeah, and like being in on the joke, being in on like if kind of thing. Right. That was also huge. And I think live stream is such a great signal for this. Obviously it can also be speaking to sports and different things like that are really rising up. I mean, sports have always been big, but they're just so much in culture, and they're infusing in so many different areas. Mm-hmm. But the cool thing about live streaming is, it's these moments that we're experiencing together, and then we can jump online and we're all talking about it together, and we're creating this like really like fun moment most of the time together online and even offline. Like you're going and talking and having coffee with friends, and you're all talking about the same thing.
And maybe it's not a fun moment sometimes, maybe it's a unifying moment. It made me think of, I saw on social media, there was a live stream happening. I feel like it was maybe FaZe. He's like a big streamer, but they were doing a live stream and he had a couple other streamers on with him. And then they all got the emergency alert at the same time for the LA fires, the Pacific Palisades one. And they were like opening their phones while they're on the stream, like showing each other, being like, what do we do? And it seemed like a moment where they're like, it kind of took them out of what they were experiencing, but it was relevant to all of them at the same time, and even a lot of the people that were watching the stream. So has lots of different ways. I think there's also like smaller ways that brands can tap into this. Like one feature I noticed more recently on DAZN, which is a way for, at least for Canadians, to stream like NFL Sunday Ticket and stuff like that. That's how I watch football games. When you watch it on the TV, it's pretty normal. Like it just feels like a TV broadcast experience. But when you open up a game on your phone in the DAZN app, they have a live chat function that opens when you pick which stream you want to watch. And there's a bunch of people like reacting to different moments in the game and stuff like that. I don't always engage with it, but it's one of those ways that I think they're reacting to how do we bring fans around this specific game. Likely they're fans of these specific teams, and give them the opportunity to react together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel like I was just thinking too about like brands and how they can participate in things like this, because you've mentioned like there's a bigger movement happening online that you can participate in a smaller way in your own local space. So like run clubs are a good example. Like there's run clubs are a very popular thing in every single city. You can do them here. And then you also talked about book clubs, which is exciting. So for brands, like that's a way they could probably participate in something bigger, just see what's happening that's bigger and find a way to do it in their own way, like in a smaller scale.
Yeah, exactly. Like bringing that larger like macro view or macro event, and then bringing it and being able to be more localized too, which then again, like the cool thing about this is we start to see the personalized trend from, people want to be seen moving into the shared moments, and we can start to like, put these trends together, shake them around and create these ideas that really speak to more people and really speak to like what's happening out there as well.
Like those lookalike contests. I feel like that applies to
Yes.
both trends. People like, I look like Bradley Cooper and I want to be recognized for it. I'm not saying I do, but I'm just using like a random
It's
person.
like,
like,
wow.
I want to meet more people that look like Bradley too.
Or I
Yeah.
want to just go see a bunch of Bradleys.
Yeah, and just like joke about it together, I feel like it scratches both surfaces.
Right. And I'm glad you brought that up, because one thing that I was thinking of when we were talking about this trend and how maybe it could feel like the direction here is to think bigger and try to hop into that, but and not be niche, because the first trend was like about niche and allowing people to feel seen in their content, even if it is by zeroing in on niche communities. But it's kind of like the two of them combined can be really strong too. So it's not like picking one of these and leaning in, because there can be overlap.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we might talk about this later, but even just to just quickly touch on this now, like the point of these trends, or any trends really, is to use them as like a springboard. And you can either, use one to start ideating with your team or alone or whatever you need to do to like get new ideas, or you can start to like put trends together and see what's going to happen. So if I put the personalized, or like people want to be seen, and I put, this shared moments one together, like what ideas could come out of that based on our sandbox of like the problem we're trying to solve.
That's awesome. Okay, I want to get into the next trend, which is my favorite trend from the trend report, which is people want play. Tell us about that.
Yeah, this one is probably my favorite too. It's it's really an emphasis towards prioritizing fun, creativity, playful experiences, just play in general, as a way to really combat digital fatigue and just embrace joy and escapism. So this one is a bit of a swing, maybe because of like the political climate. And I mean, we can look at this in different ways, but this one's really, really fun. So it's about, having unserious fun, just like being just like not so serious about everything. Gaming, sports, hobbies, really like being okay to like follow your passion, follow your interests, being curious, trying new things, experimenting, being okay to be silly, parallel play, like being together and doing things together. So it's a really, really fun one that people can start to experiment with.
Yeah, this one resonates with me so much because I feel all this a lot. And for me, like it feels like a reaction to what's happening in the world in general, like politics and just like life stuff. I want to talk about I'm excited about this because I think as marketers, we're always like trying to inspire an action. And I think a lot of that is driven to business and sales and things like that. But I think at least it gives me a little bit of permission to say, hey, the goal can be just to have fun. Like the goal here to make an impact, because this is the landscape. Digital audiences want to just like be silly and have fun and have like silly little TikToks to share with their friends. Like that too is still bringing a lot of value and is still something worth pursuing if you're just willing and brave to let go of the KPIs or make that a KPI, Yeah,
I
so
like
this is
that.
fun.
Make that a KPI.
Yeah, why not? The unserious fun is like so amazing. But tell me about parallel play.
Yes, that one actually is a signal that's kind of popped up more. So Morgan and I have just been talking about that. So it's even just like a phrase that I've been hearing more and more, and start to like, again, it's that whole idea. You start to like notice it. Okay, I noticed it once. Okay, I'm starting to notice it more. So this one, parallel play, is all around, getting together with a friend or multiple friends, and you're all doing different things, but you're like together. So like
So you're not doing the same thing. It's not like building Lego together.
No, like maybe one person's building Lego, maybe one person's crocheting, or one person's.
That's you to a T.
Stop.
That is like, you just need a body in the room. You're not trying to like do something together because that might slow you down.
Yeah.
But you just want proximity.
Yeah, well, that's like, I think, other like influences to that. But no, I think this is funny because I've heard parallel play a lot as a mom. Like there's a stage in life where your kids don't need you to entertain them and they just like exist in your presence.
Yeah.
kind of like me to you. But
We're seeing that with our kids now too.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it's so funny when you had this in the report in parallel play in terms of like adults, like they are getting together to just exist together and maybe not necessarily do the same thing, but do something together that might be different.
Yeah, exactly. And this one's also like around a bit of like loneliness, you know, post pandemic, people just wanting to kind of get together, maybe also like economically, like just getting together, doing your cute little hobbies together, not having to all be on like the same hobby. Again, trying new things, experimenting, and being okay with that.
I have a brilliant example for this one that a brand did. Sunday's Furniture invited me to a craft night, and they basically transformed their showroom into different stations. So they had like a painting station, they had a clay like pottery station, they had a drawing station, they had like someone to help you guide you through that. So you could like all be in the same beautiful space and doing different like types of things. And I feel like that's a great way for a brand to take this kind of trend and run with it and take it and make it their own.
Do you think like going to the fair is like parallel play? It's what it's making me think of, because like you go
Stampede.
Yeah,
What?
exactly. Like you, just so ludicrous. You're going together like in a group, but everyone kind of has a different game they want to play or a different thing they want to see. But you're kind of then like recongregating to get a like deep fried pickles or like elephant ears or something like that, and then you're kind of breaking off again, a few booths down to do your
Be
different
honest,
thing.
Alyssa.
You can say no. That's where you got my line of thought.
I mean, I think it's a little different, but I mean, that's good for you and your friend group, just like going off and coming back. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't
No,
know.
that's
I feel
super
like
cute.
Families do that too.
Yeah, but also this trend also relates to hobbies. Like everyone is getting a hobby last year. Likely that's going to continue, and the hobbies are just for fun. They're not like trying to. I think one thing I'm seeing a lot online is like find a hobby that you don't need to monetize. That's just for you and just for fun. And there's a lot of value in that, but I think it's like it says so much about our culture and what we need right now and what people are craving. Could be a reaction to like life and stuff, but also just having something that's just for you and not for anything else.
I really like this like parallel play piece as well as the unserious fun. I think I almost wonder if it can end up compounding into deeper relationships than we've ever had. Because I think when I think back to elementary school or even high school, you kind of had your friend group based on a shared interest, like you had the jocks, you had the emo kids, but also you had people congregate around like sci-fi or like a certain sports team or different things like that. And there was almost a pressure to align yourself with the interests of the group that you wanted to be part of rather than building a group around the things that you're actually interested in. So I'm just curious like where this will take us, because for me, especially I think in the last couple of years, I've tapped in a little bit more to unserious fun, but also given myself permission to actually like what I like and own it. Even just like I've mentioned this a couple times on the show, but reading fantasy books, like it just feels like such a weird thing for me to say that I like, and I don't know why that is, but I don't even have that many friends that read fantasy books, but it's just so fun for me to tap into it. And then as I start to find sub communities of people that are interested in that same genre, then that's really exciting, So
Definitely.
Yeah, and I think too with the play, what's really cool is that, like, it's also I think like what you're saying like about relationships, like we're learning after the pandemic like how to be friends with people again, how to like come together, how to hang out together. So if we can just learn to like play together, I guess, or like be okay with like just coming together. I feel like it reminds me of like a meme I think I've seen where it's just like, I just want to have a friend that I can just like go do errands with. And so,
Yes.
yeah, right. And right. Like I just want to do nothing. I don't want to spend money.
Let's
I just want to like hang out. Yeah. I feel like it's kind of similar to that, and that we're learning how to be together again. We're learning how to hang out, and so play can be really helpful for that. It's a way for us to like get together, not feel so serious, and just to learn to come together after maybe being apart.
Does parallel reading count?
I think so.
I think that's actually like
a better example.
Yeah, the thing, like
cool.
the one to do.
Yeah, because even as we started this year, we've like been trying to change up our habits in the evenings after we put our kids to bed, and just like be in bed sooner and like get away from just watching TV every night and stuff like that. And it was funny because I kind of perceived like calling it a night earlier to be like less social, like almost we would be losing this time that we've had together, like watching TV or relaxing on the couch. But I actually do, when I think about it, I actually feel like it's been more quality, even though we're not necessarily like talking that whole time. We might be reading or listening to something or whatever, but it actually, after a few weeks of trying to change that habit, it feels more quality.
Yeah, in my case, I've been reading and crying. You've just
That's
been
true.
like,
I've just been like reading my book with like my hand on Mitzi next to my bed, like, are you okay? But
Yeah,
like
and that's what they say. Like parallel play is like being okay to be alone together. So I think it's a really cool way to start to like move away from, loneliness. It's like a really big thing right now. It's even an epidemic in itself, and so just being okay to just be together. Being unserious, having a bit of levity, reading, doing nothing. I think is really, really important.
Cool. Well, let's wrap it up with trend 5. I think there's like some connection here between trend 4 and now what this one is, which is people want ease.
Yeah, so this one, everyone can take a deep breath. We're now like moving into the last trend, but it's really around a growing desire for simplicity, functionality, just like low barrier solutions that reduce stress, make life more manageable. And this can be through low tech tools, just even like straightforward content and just everyday essentials. So we have this list on all of our trends, what people want. My favorite one that really sums this trend up is that people want to be taken care of. Whether you are 30 or 20 or 50 or wherever you're like, yeah, I just want that like comfort, that ease, someone to take care of me, whether that's through a gadget or an app or a practice or whatever it might be.
right. And this is what I was referring to when I said like there's a trend. I don't know if you've seen the trend, but there's a trend on TikTok where these women, usually women, will say to their like husband or spouse and say like, hey, I don't think I can pay the mortgage this month. And then they reply like, when have you ever paid the mortgage? And it's kind of like funny, but like all the comments are like, everyone's desire is like, I want that, I want that, I want that. Or even just, I was teasing one of our team members because she often calls herself a 24-year-old teenager. And I think it's really funny. There's that, like a lot of people do that on TikTok as well. And this is where like some of those things and elements, they do play into something bigger and a bigger feeling. It's not just like a silly little thing that starts to catch on. It's like this is laddering up to like what a bigger desire and behavior that people want.
Yeah, exactly. And even what you're saying there, looking in the comments, like the comments can have so many signals there where people are all talking about the same thing or all like, yes, 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 yes. Like you obviously need to like take everything with a grain of salt, but that is a really great place to sort of start to especially understand, what is the overall sentiment or like what are people feeling? And yeah, is this resonating, this idea?
I like that. I've always lived for the comment section. I feel like that's the best part of social media often. One of the things that stands out to me here is like the idea of low stress tech. And I don't know if I'm even getting low stress tech right here, but I think I've been gravitating towards what I perceive that to be, which is I just got a sleep mask that has like vibration built in to like, that's meant to like relax the muscles around your eyes as you go to bed. And that's been awesome. And then also I've been reading books for a while now, but I just got a Kindle and I just love the Kindle compared to my phone or an iPad so much because it does one thing really well and I don't have any of the interruptions. So it's been so validating to just put my phone on Do Not Disturb. And then if I need something, I pick up my Kindle and read a book. And I get tired faster too than watching a TV show. Which helps with my nighttime routine and helps me not stay up too late.
One thing about you is you love low stress tech.
Okay.
You do. You love the techie gadgets that connect to wellness.
Yeah.
And we actually talk about also like aesthetic self-care. So this like includes like the shower heads and like all the extra gadgets that contribute and make self-care fun, like red light masks and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I also want to say, like, when I say, like, we just want someone to take care of us or, like, just to be taken care of, it can also be ourselves taking care of ourselves. And I think that's what this is all about. So it's not just like, I need a man to take care of me. No. That's not the vibe of this trend.
Right.
It's like, no, we want to feel taken care of. We want to, have a really great night's sleep. We want to get off our tech.
Build routines.
Just, again, having those healthier indulgences, I think, are also really important in this trend.
Another point in this trend, too, that we've talked about or we mentioned is reliable relationships with brands and creators. Can you give us more about that?
Yeah, I think that one, so reliable relationships with brands and creators is just, again, being able, I think it's the trust element. So being able to understand that, what they are doing, they're going to show up, they're going to be there. It's like what they're saying is going to happen. I think that's kind of like what we're meaning when people want that.
Mm-hmm. And is that an acceleration of what we saw last year? Because one of the trends we had last year was people want real value. It's like value from brands, or guaranteed value, excuse me. So value from brands, and like really like making sure that they're getting value from like their products, or they're buying into the same values or shared values from brands and creators.
Yeah, exactly. That's the cool thing about, especially even this trend report, is just seeing the evolution. So I think we're still looking and people are still wanting value. But yeah, we've really focused around here around how it kind of looks more, maybe like a bit more internally for us personally, but brands are still so important in that evolution of this trend. Just making sure, the value is there and it's reliable, and that it's like that whole idea of being taken care of. You can trust what's happening. You can trust, what's going to happen to you and elsewhere as well.
Yeah, the trust piece, I feel like that you can build campaigns around. Like, it reminds me of the Volvo ad that everyone was talking about a while ago. Was it Volvo?
Yeah, I think.
Yes,
I think that's
the
one.
Safety one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that one is like a really good way to use some of those like ideals and to build out storylines around it.
Well, that was trend number 5. 5 for 5. Alyssa, thanks for being here.
No problem.
And sharing your expertise with us. If you liked this and you want to dive deeper into the trend report, as well as our bi-weekly newsletter, Scan Club, which kind of does this in a smaller capacity all year round, every 2 weeks, make sure you go to scanclub.substack.com. It'll be linked in our show notes. Also, just subscribers get this every 2 weeks, so it's not just the one-off trend report, but it's something that you can benefit from all year round. If you're listening and you haven't tried YouTube yet, make sure you try out YouTube so you can see our bright, shining faces and everything we got going on around here. And other than that, you can join us on Instagram, TikTok, slide into our DMs, let us know what you're liking, what you want to see more of, and even some of your reactions to these trends that we articulated today. We'd love to hear your thoughts and how you even start to apply them to the work that you're doing, the things you're thinking about.
Thank you for listening. Go check out the trend report. And without further ado,
Alyssa, do you want to do the honors of ringing the gong?
no pressure.
Yeah, I do. That was fun.
See you later.
See you next week.